Listen to this episode if you are starting to scale your brand and you are wondering which one of these you should master first, whether it be e-com or maybe retail. This is one of the bigger questions that I get is, should I start on social media and go D2C, or should I start talking to Target and Walmart and trying to get into a major retailer? Today, we're going to dive into how do you know which your product is actually made for and is actually going to be better for you, and what you need no matter what? One of the biggest mistakes I see founders make is choosing either a sales channel that they want, not one that their product actually needs, or trying to do everything all at once without actually mastering something. Everybody wants to get into Target or Anthropologie, or everybody wants to have this thriving Shopify store and be in all of these boutiques nationwide. Everybody is saying that they want everything, but the reality is not every product is actually built for both either, or you really do have to pick one to master that is the home of your brand before we really do scale. So today I want to help you figure out which lane makes the most sense for your business and what this really looks like for you. This is actually a coaching sessions episode, which means one of you inside of our Founder Cafe community, which is our free podcast community, asked me this question: Maddie, I'm scaling, but I don't know if I should go all in on e-com or if I should go all in on retail. Am I ready to scale into retail? And what does that really look like? We're going to dive into this today, and you're going to know with your brand which one you should go all in on while you're scaling, and how do you know which one is actually made for you to be the home of your brand. Before we do that, I just want to take 10 quick seconds to say hello. My name is Madison Page. Just in case you're new here, I am a business growth specialist, and we help people build category leading product brands inside of their industry. So first things first is, of course, there is so much nuance to this question. This question isn't which one will make me more money. The question really is which one fits your product the best, your product, your industry, your brand, and what that really looks like. You can build either way here. You can build in retail, you can build on e-com, you can do both. I work in both all the time, but this is a good guide to know which one you should master first, because no matter what, you do need the home of your brand. You do need a money-making channel that you feel is the most scalable for you. And every brand that comes to me is basically either we're wholesale first, whether it be legacy or boutique, we'll talk about that in a second, or we're e-com first, and then we expand into others. We can have multiple sales channels. This doesn't mean you have to pick one and you're stuck with it forever, but you do have to have certain things within your business to make one or the other really make sense for you. So when we talk e-com, generally, e-commerce works best when your average order value gives you a little bit more room to go out and do a lot of acquisition, do a lot of top of funnel marketing. Ideally, you have like a $50 to $100 product. You can work at around a $30 average order value, but below a $30 average order value is going to be really tricky to make your e-com the most profitable model for you. It's where a lot of people start if you don't have the money for retail quite yet. They'll start on e-com knowing that the profit will come, but to make the home of your business a non-profitable channel, it's really hard because you have ads and you have all of these creators and this acquisition, this customer acquisition cost. If you have a product that's under $30 with Meta the way that it is today, it's going to be really hard to be able to afford everything that you need in order to acquire customers, because retail, their customers are already coming in. You don't have to tackle that, because that is one of the major factors of the difference here is the average order value between e-com and retail. If you're making $12 on an order, there isn't much room for a customer acquisition cost, because your cost is probably $4 to $6. And then you have other overhead on top of that. And if it costs you, sometimes my customer acquisition costs, depending on my brands, are $30 to $50, right? And so sometimes it does cost a lot of money on that first one. And if it's going to take 6 purchases in order to just acquire a customer and break even, it's not worth it. So a lot of times my first question is, do you have a higher price point than about $30? Or are you really just an entry level product? Now, we do see this a lot in food and bev. Many food and bev or CPG brands, they might start online, but their goal is still to get into retail because that's where they'll make money. They might start trying to sell 6-packs or 12-packs or big sample packs online to up their average order value to be able to build a name for themselves. But their ultimate goal is oftentimes retail because then they can sell one can for $4 and it makes sense. But to sell one can for $4 online just doesn't make sense, which is oftentimes why we see major CPG brands no longer selling online at all, because at a certain point, it might not actually be profitable for them. So you do still see them building online, but while they're separately trying to get these retail placements as their major sales channel. E-com requires basically a reason for somebody to buy from you, where retail is a little bit more of an impulse buy. If you think about how you walk around Target, e-com is going to take a little bit more investigating and a little bit more intrigue to get somebody to buy. So you have to ask yourself, why wouldn't they just grab this while they're already at the store? First things first. Or two, is this actually something that's unique enough and that they can understand to actually want to buy online? If your product category is already everywhere, you have to give people a compelling reason to order it online, wait 5 to 7 business days, and to actually think that you are that much better. This is where positioning comes in. This is what makes you different and makes you worth it. When we talk about a premium product, we had an episode on Tuesday that talked a lot about how do you build a premium brand. This is what we're talking about, is how do you make it worth it through your positioning that people will buy it online instead of just grab it at the store. So, this is like a loaf of bread. If somebody's trying to sell a regular $7 loaf of bread online, it's going to be hard for somebody to be like, why am I ordering this online? It doesn't really matter. But if you're selling a $15 fun, sourdough, high quality loaf of bread, you might get people to buy a few of them and freeze some of them, and they would be able to buy them online. But you have to sell it and you have to make it worth it to wait a little bit before that product actually comes in. Otherwise, they'll run in a grocery store and grab a loaf of bread, right? If you need something quickly, you're probably not going to go e-com route and try to find it. If you just have a regular product and you haven't actually separated yourself well, retail might be a little bit better for you if you really are just like another in your industry. Now, of course, as a brand, I always recommend having some sort of positioning that really separates you from everyone else. But if there really is very little meaningful difference between you and your competitors, e-com becomes much harder. We can fix that with good messaging, but it does become much harder. On the other side of things here, some products are just easier to sell online. Some products almost belong online because they take so much more education. If we think about when people shop in retail, and we're going to talk more about retail in a second, but when people shop in retail, it is a quick buy. They're walking down the aisle and they pick it up, and you have about 5 seconds from the minute that they touch that product for them to be able to understand what this product is, how do you use it, and what really makes this product different if they're going to throw it into their cart. Some products are too new for the market to be on shelves in retail. Some require too much education to be on shelves in retail, and some require too much personal identity in order to prove the actual price point of that. Again, I'm working with a brand right now who sells a product that could be in any grocery store ever, but her normal product category sells between $7 to $15, and her product is between $50 to $100 for different sizes of it. And so we aren't going grocery because we know that people aren't going to be able to understand the branding and the identity and the story behind this product in order to justify a 10x cost on the shelves of a Target to buy a $50 when it's all next to $7 to $15 items. So understanding that for her, e-com makes a lot of sense because we can really bring that identity and that branding and that story. There's also some products that just need a lot of education for people to be able to understand. Those perform much better because you can warm them up over time. You can have a lot of content that goes out to them, and that there's a lot more information in front of them. They spend more time on your website than they do looking at your product in store.
If it's okay, I'm going to interrupt this podcast for 30 quick seconds to let you know about the Founders Cafe. It is my completely free podcast community where you can gain access to bonus resources, gain access to me and free coaching calls, as well as build a network of other business owners just like yourself. Business ownership is a lonely game, and we might as well build community, build a network, and have a space to collaborate. We can bring this conversation and all the other conversations we have on this podcast over into this free podcast community and make this a two-way street. I would love to answer your questions there, connect with you, see you on our next free coaching call. Click the link in the show notes and you'll find the link there.
So switching gears over to the retail side, when we talk retail, it's not just like retail in general. There really are two different avenues in retail. You have legacy retail, which is the big box stores, whether that be Target, Bloomingdale, Nordstrom's, Whole Foods. It's the big chain stores out there that are legacy companies that are going to make really large major orders. And then you also have boutique retail, which are gift shops, boutiques, touristy stores, specialty retailers. And this is a totally different game than talking legacy. These stores love more giftable products, usually a little bit higher end, small luxuries, collectible items, conversation starters, a little bit more like knick-knacky or like something perfect to buy on vacation, right? Whereas legacy retail, we want to be easy to understand, easy to grab, easy to justify, and be a little bit of a lower price point. It needs to have minimal education if you are going into this more legacy retail route. Because again, we have to think of if your product is on the shelves of a Target, what is actually going through people's minds when they're shopping? They're just walking around, they're tossing things in their cart, right? They don't want to have to justify something that is super high end. Of course, if you're going into a legacy retail, it's a little bit more expensive, maybe like a Bloomingdale's or a Nordstrom. People are going to take a little bit more time, and it's okay for your price point to be higher, but it does still need to be something that doesn't take a lot to actually educate on what that product really is. Boutique retail is a really great way to scale and expand. I have some clients that are making $500,000 a year plus, $500,000 alone just in boutiques before we start to scale in other areas. But I personally don't think boutique retail should be many people's main driver of income. Why that is because it is a low profit model. Usually they're smaller orders, not at least to the scale of legacy retail. And they're usually a one and done. They have one store, maybe two stores, maybe three stores. And it just doesn't quite make sense for the price point that you're going to have it at. And with the amount of control that you have with these people, you don't know what your brand is being portrayed in front of. Now, if you are very selective with the boutique retail that you go into, I still think it's a great scalable model for you to get more acquisition, have more people find you, and to build a business and to scale a business. You can absolutely go into these more luxury kind of gifting stores or just, whatever, things that align with your audience. But something that we do find very often is that it takes a lot of work for not as much squeeze when you go into those. Whereas on legacy retail, sure, they're still getting the 50% off wholesale price point, but they might also be buying 40,000 units. They might also be buying 20,000 units. And so it might also make a little bit more sense on that nature as well. Legacy retail is much more of a volume game. These stores need product, that move very quickly. They take little time to understand. They need products that almost sell themselves and they catch attention easily. But sometimes you're getting a $50,000 or a 50,000 unit order on those. This is why I think legacy retail can absolutely be a major channel, but because boutique retail, oftentimes they might buy 25, 50, you might get 100 units or 200 units, but it's a lot more of a lift on you in order for that to be your major channel, that I would rather you either go e-com and boutique retail or legacy retail with some boutique, but I wouldn't necessarily have boutique retail be your main channel. There's very low control. Yes, you're pretty diversified. In legacy retail, you can be very singularly in Target only, and then you're so dependent on Target working, but it just isn't worth the squeeze of a 50% off wholesale price point sometimes to have a 25 unit order. Of course, you have to change your minimum order quantities and things like that. There's a lot of strategy that goes into it. But I want you to really think about, when we talk legacy retail, think about how you shop at Target. You're not just standing there for 10 minutes on your phone researching products. You're making quick decisions. So if your product really does require a longer explanation, a founder story or an education, whatever, then it doesn't necessarily make sense. One thing that we have to touch on when it comes to retail is that legacy retail does have a major downside, is that it requires cash flow up front. Very often, you will get, again, whether it be 5,000 units, 10,000 units, 20,000 units, $50,000 worth of inventory, whatever, you might have to fork that over and you might not get that purchase order actually paid for 30, 60, or 90 days. And so you are dependent on, okay, I need to produce that inventory, get it into these stores, and then they may pay you. But if it doesn't sell, you are still on the hook from buying it back from these retailers. If you are not positive that it will sell on retail shelves or that you will be able to drive at least some sales that way, then it is a tricky model because it is a cash flow nightmare if you don't sell the product and or you don't have the money to fork up front because you might be pinching pennies until that purchase order comes through. The final thing that I really want to talk about here before I talk about kind of like a simple decision-making framework is, first, the non-negotiable either way that I really want to highlight is that all three of these models need an online presence. All three of these models, of course, e-com, your online presence is going to be the home of your brand. If you're selling e-com and you are not focusing on social media and your website and your emails, you are doing yourself a disservice. You need to have an online presence, which is going to drive your product. If you are in legacy retail, you want to build a community that is going to go and buy from you upon launch and over again in store. You also want to have awareness of your product, that when people walk in stores, it's not the first time they've ever heard about your product. They've seen your brand and they're aware of it, or they've seen some influencer talk about it. No matter what, you need this online presence because there's perception around it, right? It's where we're all spending so much of our time right now, whether we like it or not. It's where the consumer is learning about products and educating themselves on brands. So legacy retail and boutique retail, again, just because I don't believe it should be your major channel. I have clients that really have been able to withstand on this, but it is a low control and a hard way to be profitable without having some e-com. So no matter what here, one thing that is not on the back burner is your marketing. Your marketing doesn't go away no matter the sales channel you're going on. And truly, social media marketing right now is a non-negotiable. Having a really solid website and a really solid web presence is a non-negotiable for your brand, especially if you're building, if you're scaling. If you had the luxury of really developing a brand 10 years ago and you're making a couple $1 million already and you're good with that, you're scaling into more boutique or more legacy retail, you don't feel like you need a social media, that's okay. There are some brands out there, but you had to have gotten in early to build that brand perception early. If you're building now, it doesn't make sense. So the non-negotiable, no matter what you choose, you must have an online presence. So a simple decision-making framework here for you is, if your product is higher average order value, a little bit more unique, either story-driven, premium, needs a little bit of education, I would lean e-com. If your product is lower price point, easy to understand, impulse friendly, frequently purchased, doesn't require much explanation to see what makes it different, retail can deserve a bigger role for you. And that is a really great way for you to go. I wouldn't necessarily choose based on what looks cool initially. We have to choose based on how your product is actually made. Getting into Target sounds really exciting. I have clients come to me all the time, Maddie, I just want to get into Target. And I'm like, your product just doesn't make sense to get into Target, or you are not at a point where Target actually makes sense for you quite yet. Building a huge Shopify brand sounds exciting, but for some of you, if you are, again, like a food and bev company, you are going to be better off. Yes, you might scale first on Shopify, but knowing that legacy retail is your major focus. Neither matters if the economics to scale don't actually work. Your product should tell you where it wants to be sold. Your job is to listen and to build the brand and to have the community around it no matter what. No matter your sales channel, you still have an ecosystem of your brand. I also want to say that you can be in both of these things. This is just having one as the major driver of your business. And eventually they might kind of change. They might say, okay, during the holidays, our major driver is going to be e-com, but all these other times, the retail really does pick the pace a little bit. But as you're scaling, I recommend choosing one that is your ultimate and that is your highlight, your hallmark, what you're really trying to go for, and building the business and the brand and the marketing around that. That is my 2 cents here. The best sales channel isn't the one that everybody is chasing or that looks the most glamorous. It's the one that your product can actually win in, sell in, and scale in. You can have one sales channel and make millions. Many brands are strictly e-com and that they are making millions of dollars, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. The thing is that we don't want to diversify too quickly or it'll run your systems really thin. So if you are fully legacy retail, that's great, but we have to get people in there. You really want to master one sales channel. I talk about this theory of one all the time. Have one major hero collection, hero product, have one major sales channel, have one major audience, have one major positioning messaging point, and then really go all in on that for at least 1 year. And this is just another piece of that puzzle, is that you have to know which sales channel to go on. Pick which one works for you and go narrow and deep while you're expanding, knowing that the sky's the limit eventually. But right now, we have to scale on which one makes the most amount of sense. I hope that this was helpful for you. This was a coaching sessions episode. If you want me to answer one of your questions in our next episode, click the link in the show notes and join the Founders Cafe. It's a school community that we are constantly talking about the podcast in and chatting about it. You get bonuses, you get surprises. We do monthly coaching in there as well for free. You can chat with me directly, but you also can submit questions for episodes just like this. I hope this was helpful for you. I love you. I'm rooting for you. I'm in your corner always, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Growth Podcast. We put out new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. So if you love this one, make sure that you're subscribed so you never miss a conversation. If you want more conversations with me and other business owners, make sure that you join our completely free podcast community, the Founders Cafe. The link is in the show notes. You can get bonus resources, access to free coaching calls, as well as connect with like-minded business owners like yourself. Make sure that you rate and review the podcast 5 stars, share it with a friend to keep those conversations moving, and come back every Tuesday and Friday. I'll see you there.